The time is 6:45. Here's the news edited by Danushka Madhavala, read by Victor Raj. First, take a look at the headlines. The president addressing the nation said Sri Lanka expects to vaccinate 13 million of its population against COVID-19 by the end of September. He added that he always acts according to a plan. The president added that he is committed to fulfilling that pledge stated in the National Policy Framework. New WHO representative to Sri Lanka commends the country's healthcare system. Immigration and Immigration Department to resume issuing passport in a limited capacity. The Minister of Health says 1,239 more persons were tested positive for the novel coronavirus yesterday. Foreign news: George Floyd murder, Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years. Local news in detail. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, in a televised address to the nation yesterday, said that Sri Lanka expects to vaccinate 13 million of its population against COVID-19 by the end of September. Speaking on the national inoculation drive, the president stated that Sri Lanka will ramp up vaccination programs upon the receipt of 21 million of coronavirus vaccines in the coming 3 months. The president said that COVID-19 global pandemic is the most serious challenge at this juncture, not only for our country but also each and every country irrespective of their development status. About 180 million people worldwide have contracted the virus, while nearly 3.9 million people have died from it so far. The president said that the people elected him as the president in November 2019 with high expectations for the future of the country. He said he is committed to fulfilling those expectations, regardless of the seriousness of the obstacles. Similar to how we took on the responsibility to end the war against LTT terrorism, which was considered an impossible task, and he is committed to liberate the country from difficulties it faces and bringing prosperity to the people. The president added that he always acts according to a plan when planning the future. We must not forget the past and should properly realize the present as well. The president said that the government have made great strides in ensuring national security once again. The most suitable of officers were appointed to the responsible positions. We have strengthened the morals of the security forces, which had deteriorated owing to various harassments. The intelligence service that were weak at that time have been reorganized. We have reactivated the security plans that were abandoned during the previous government's tenure. He added that the government successfully contained the underworld, which was becoming a major threat to the country. Although it is difficult to solve at once, the drug menace has been largely brought under control. We are implementing a program to eradicate this menace completely. Today, the people of this country no longer have a reason to fear for the unity of the country. This government will not allow anyone to interfere in the internal affairs of our country. He said that the government led by him has ensured national security. One of the major challenges was to rebuild the economy, which was in ruins. We came up with a sound plan for that purpose, he said. During the previous government tenure, from 2015 to 2019, there were no natural disasters in the country. There was no global crisis like coronavirus at that time. However, simply because of the failure of this state administration, the economy of our country began to collapse without a just cause. By 2019, the country's economic growth rate slowed down to 2.1%. The debt of the country had increased to 13,000 billion rupees from 7,400 billion rupees. The tax burden on the people had doubled. The rupee destabilized and the prices of commodities skyrocketed. Export earnings had declined and foreign reserves had depleted. The government annually allocates budget funds to create a conducive environment that allows supporting the public finance environment. A total of 560 billion rupees is being spent, and among those budgetary allocations, 50 billion rupees will be utilized for Samruddhi program, 90 billion rupees for provision of free medicines, and 40 billion rupees to enhance the welfare of disabled soldiers. 250 billion rupees for the payment of pensions, 35 billion rupees to provide fertilizer subsidies to farmers, and the Treasury has allocated 25 million rupees to provide uniforms, textbooks and nutritious meals to the school children. 70 billion rupees have been annually allocated to provide various other reliefs, including maintenance of loss-making state institutions. The government has to bear a number of new expenditures to deal with the coronavirus crisis. Even though our foreign exchange reserves declined, the government has not defaulted on loan installments that should be paid to foreign financial institutions. We had to pay a huge loan installments of about $4 billion a year as a result of loans taken by various governments in the past. The opposition socialized a view that the government would not be able to repay these loans. But we did not discredit the country and repaid all the loans on time. We strengthened the paddy farmer by providing a guarantee price for the paddy, fertilizers provided free of charge. A good price was received for tea, coconut, rubber and cinnamon yields recently. The ban on the import and re-export of agricultural products that can be grown in Sri Lanka created a good market for crops such as pepper and turmeric. Our sugar factories are making a profit today because the importation of the ethanol has been completely banned. Many people who were not interested in the agricultural sector in the past have now engaged in various agricultural projects as a result of giving due respect to this sector. We have initiated a massive program to rehabilitate 14,000 tanks throughout the country to uplift the agricultural sector. Through this, we have the opportunity to cultivate thousands of utilized paddy fields and abandoned agricultural lands. We have taken several important steps towards building a sustainable development policy that is resilient to environmental and climate change. Another important step in this process is the decision to ban import of chemical fertilizers into the country. There has been a debate in our country on this issue over decades. The use of chemical fertilizers introduced to this country about 45 years ago has become a major social threat to our country. The widespread use of these chemicals has contaminated the soil and the water, and many experts believe that it has directly led to the increase in cancer and kidney diseases. The harm caused to human life by use of chemical fertilizers must be identified and remedied. Although there has been a great deal of discussion in society about the long-term damage it caused to people's lives, no government has ever had the ability to make a direct decision in this regard. 6.9 million people of this country approved the promise to move away from the use of chemical fertilizers and direct the country to the use of organic fertilizers. Therefore, he He is committed to fulfilling that pledge stated in the National Policy Framework, Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor. It is the responsibility of the present generation to implement that policy for the benefit of our future generations. Stopping the importation of chemical fertilizers into the country is not a hasty decision. Prior to the implementation of that decision, stocks of fertilizer required for the forthcoming season had been imported. Already, 300,000 metric tons of fertilizer required for 1.5 million hectares of the cultivated land has been distributed. At the same time, about 8,000 metric tons of organic fertilizer have been distributed. Over the next 4 years, the government hoped to construct 300,000 houses through projects implemented jointly by the government and the public and private sectors. Meanwhile, 60,000 urban houses and 200,000 rural houses will be constructed. Our plan also includes 40,000 estate houses and rental houses. More than 20,000 of these houses are under construction. Another 10,000 will be constructed before the end of this year. Under the previous government, only 450 flat units were constructed for the benefit of low-income families. Nevertheless, at present, we are building around 7,000 flat units for low-income earners. Due attention was paid to education as promised. Although the schools were often closed due to COVID-19 in the past, we have made great strides in distance education and have continued to provide the educational facilities that children needed. Tens of thousands of schools have been provided with fiber optics internet connections. More schools will be provided with this facility. Moreover, we are all set to enroll 10,000 new students for technology-based degrees at open universities this year and to provide them with on-the-job education from the first year. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing with more local news, the Ministry of Health says 1,239 more persons were tested positive for the novel coronavirus yesterday. All new cases have been associated with the Nivea COVID-19 cluster. This brings the total number of COVID-19 cases confirmed in the country thus far to 249,289. As per statistics, 31,807 virus-infected people are currently being treated at designated hospitals and treatment centers across the island. Meanwhile, the recoveries count climbed to 214,668 today, as 1,843 patients who were under medical care for novel coronavirus had returned to health. According to officials' data, the COVID-19 death toll now stands at 2,814. Sri Lanka has recorded 48 more COVID-19 related deaths confirmed by the Director General of Health Services on 24th. The new development has pushed the official death toll due to the virus in Sri Lanka to 2,862. According to the data released by the Department of Government Information, the new victims confirmed today include 22 females and 26 females. 11 victims are aged between 30 to 59 years and the remaining 37 are aged 60 and above. That ends local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Foreign Minister Dinesh Gunawardena received the newly appointed representative of the World Health Organization to Sri Lanka, Dr. Alaka Singh, yesterday at the ministry. Welcoming Dr. Singh to Sri Lanka, Minister Gunawardena recalled the close cooperation between Sri Lanka and the WHO, being the very first UN agency to be established in Colombo in 1952. He appreciated the WHO's assistance to Sri Lanka during the COVID-19 pandemic and requested continued support in securing COVID-19 vaccines to the people of Sri Lanka. Minister Gunawardena also recalled that Sri Lanka was among the first countries that stood in strong solidarity with the WHO in its efforts towards addressing the COVID-19 challenges. She commended Sri Lanka's excellent healthcare system producing impressive healthcare indicators and the country standing as an example for the other countries in the region. That ends main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight, police spokesman Senior Judge Ajit Rohana said legal action will be taken on the motorists who enter the Central Expressway, which is presently under construction. He said the vehicles also will be taken under police custody and will be produced for legal proceedings. That ends Watchlight. Moving on to world news, let's take a look at the headlines. George Floyd murder, Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years. Miami building collapse, 159 still missing. Colombia President Ivan Duque helicopter hit by gunfire. World news in detail. The U.S. white ex-police officer convicted of murdering African-American man George Floyd in Minneapolis in May 2020 has been sentenced to 22 years and 6 months in jail. The judge said Derek Chauvin's sentence was based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority and also the particular current cruelty shown to Mr. Floyd. Mr. Floyd, 48, died after Chauvin knelt on his neck for 9 minutes. His murder caused global protest against racism and police brutality. Chauvin, 45, who was convicted of second-degree murder and other charges last month. During his trial, his lawyers described the killing as an error made in good faith. Chauvin was also told to register as a predatory offender and was barred from owning firearms for life. He and 3 other former officers are separately charged with violating George Floyd's civil rights. The number of people listed as missing after the collapse of a 12-story building in the U.S. city of Miami has risen to 159, officials say. 4 people are known to have died. The mayor of Miami-Dade says they still have hope of finding survivors. Search teams working around the clock have reported hearing people banging beneath the debris. What caused the 40-year-old building to collapse early in Thursday morning remains unclear. At least 102 people have now been accounted for, but it is uncertain how many were in the building when it came down. Dozens of people have been evacuated from what is left of the structure. Gunfire has hit a helicopter carrying the president of Colombia as it flew near the border of Venezuela. President Ivan Duque was flying toward Cucuta in the Norte de Santander province, alongside the defense minister, interior minister, and the province's governor. A spokesman for the presidency said nobody was hurt in the incident. Mr. Duque denounced the cowardly attack and said he was not frightened by violence or act of terrorism. To wrap up the world news, let's take a look at the headlines once again. George Floyd murder, Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years. Miami building collapse, 159 still missing. Colombia President Ivan Duque's helicopter hit by gunfire. That came to you on World News. Moving on to development news. The Department of Immigration and Immigration performing day-to-day duties during the period of COVID-19 pandemic has started issuing passports following healthcare practices due to a limited number of people with essential service requirements. Passports are issued to a limited number of applicants at the Battaramul head office of the Department of Immigration and Immigration, as well as at the Mathura, Bavuniya, Kandy and Kurunegala regional offices following health care procedures. Only applicants who have essential service requirements should come to the nearest office to their place of residence after receiving a date using the telephone numbers given below. Applications without such a reservation will not be allowed to enter the office premises. People in the areas where quarantine travel restrictions have been imposed should refrain from visiting the office at this time, the department said. That ends development news. Moving on to sports news. Four-time Olympic champion Mo Farah will consider his future after failing to qualify for this year's games. Farah, 38, missed the 10,000-meter selection time by 19 seconds at the cold and windy British Championships in Manchester. He needed to go under 27 minutes 28 seconds to make the British team for Tokyo, but finished in 27 minutes 47.04 seconds. Farah has won 5,000 meters and 10,000 meters gold in 2012 and 2016. Farah's previous shot at qualifying for the Olympics after more than 3 years concentrating on road running was hampered by a left ankle niggle. That ends sports news.
Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money.
Commercial Leasing and Finance PLC recorded his best ever financial year despite the severe challenges arising from the COVID-19 global pandemic through the year, achieving a growth of 34% in profit before tax over the previous year to record 2.67 billion rupees, while profit after tax rose by as much as 43% over the preceding year to reach 2.2 billion rupees. Meanwhile, cost of funds decreased by as much as 23% to record 4,737 million rupees in the year under review. That ends Business News.
Business News. Sponsored by National Savings Bank. The safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of 1,000 rupees from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Service account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news. Courtesy of...
I bought my daughter a laptop for her work by managing my finances. Whatever the expenses may be, I can't afford to miss out on life's special moments like her birthday or our anniversary. So you need to invest to make your family's future flourish.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibilities. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
The Great Place to Work Institute recognized Union Assurance PLC for the 9th year as a workplace that is conducive to growth and personnel development. Based on a survey, the GPTW recognizes an organization's commitment to nurturing and developing its human resources. Commenting on the recognition, Jude Gomez, the CEO of Union Assurance, said, "This achievement is a representation of our commitment to make Union Assurance an engaging and enjoyable place to work. For Union Assurance to sustain this recognition for 9 years reflects our continuous hard work in building a high-trust workplace culture." That ends economic news.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
Shahs look at several places in Western and Sabaragama provinces and in Gol, Mathura, Kandy and Nuvareli districts. Shahs look at a few places in Eastern and Uva provinces in the evening or night. General public is kindly requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by the temporarily localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. That ends weather report.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
To wrap up the morning news on Radio Sri Lanka, a recap of headlines. The President, addressing the nation, said Sri Lanka expects to vaccinate 13 million of its population against COVID-19 by the end of September. He added that he always acts according to a plan. The President added that he is committed to fulfilling that pledge stated in the National Policy Framework. New WHO representative to Sri Lanka commends the country's healthcare system. Immigration and Immigration Department to resume issuing passports in limited capacity. The Minister of Health says 1,239 more persons were tested positive for the novel coronavirus yesterday. Foreign news, George Floyd murder, Derek Chauvin sentenced to over 22 years. That ends the main news bulletin on this Saturday morning on Radio Sri Lanka.